Uncle Dan.
Yes.
I think why we have such a celebrated podcast.
And it is the world over.
It's celebrated, in almost 2 continents, I think. So anyway, and the subcontinent. So I think what people love about our show is it is so esoteric in nature, in that it has nothing to do with anything that's going on in the contemporary world. Right. And I think that it feels like it's great to take a break from that because religion doesn't really have any bearing in modernity, right?
Would that were the case.
What?
I believe that religion is still a problem, is still extant
the
in
hell
this world.
You say.
And might still pose issues. Uncle Doug, where do you fall on this?
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to retool my segment all of a sudden now that I realize the rules of the podcast. Well, dear uncles, let me just jump in. We're going to talk about some current events that definitely have a bearing on the content of our show. But let me just start with this. Ding dong, the douche is dead. After 4 interminable and increasingly deadly years of corruption, cruelty, stupidity, and corruption.
And mass death.
The vile...
And corruption.
And more corruption. The vile venal vermilion virus vector that has plagued our land, both figuratively and literally, has at long last exited center ring and returned to the swamp from which he came.
Yay.
So tired was he of all the winning, what with after losing the popular vote twice, losing the House in 2018, losing the Senate and the presidency in 2020, being impeached twice, banned by Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitch, Spotify, Shopify, and even Pinterest. And
I never went to his Pinterest page.
I know, I wish I had.
Kind of bummed.
They sold 12-foot long ties.
To see what his Etsy fucking offerings were.
And after having failed in over 60 lawsuits to overturn the election results in a single solitary county, and failed to overturn our democracy by force, the worst man this country has ever elected slinked out of the damaged and occupied capital to spend what I hope is a long and miserable life as a shit golfer and a perpetual defendant. So, bye-bye.
Yay.
But before we say goodbye forever, I thought we should
Die mad, motherfucker.
Exactly.
Yeah,
die
right.
painful. I thought we should
jail.
take a look back at some of the bit players that we've covered on this show in what was this 4-year nuclear-armed episode of Hee Haw. So, today, let's return to my not at all backed by popular demand segment, Heretics in the News. Let this be the last time we dredge up some of these characters, but probably not.
Okay, please.
Please be gone. Let's start with one of the last fools to remain on the raft of Medusa as it sinks beneath the waves. Mike Lindell, owner and CEO of MyPillow. It bears mentioning that I covered a Monsieur Lindell back in March of 2019, when in episode 76, we discussed his life story and rise of his pillow empire. We were the first outlet to cover Lindell in any depth before he became an ignominious national figure. In that episode, I very correctly predicted that we would see much, much more of this moron. I could never have predicted the context of what was to follow, but nevertheless, where's my Pulitzer? Look, I'm not greedy. I will settle for a Peabody, a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Country Music Association of America, or even a Daytime Emmy. Hell, I'll even take Susan Lucci's if it's available.
That's a deep cut.
It's a deep cut.
That's a deep all my children cut. Did I get that right? Is that the one she was on?
Yeah, that's right.
Fuck if I know.
Yeah. Our mother was quite fond of that show, so for some reason we knew all too much about Susan Lucci.
Yeah.
Until early 2019, Lindell was only known for being that creepy dude on late night television with a big cross on his neck, selling bags stuffed with three different sizes of hypoallergenic, antimicrobial polyurethane foam cubes.
That sounds exactly like Jesse the Body Ventura.
You buy my pillow, get a good night's rest.
He really does.
Yeah.
Basically, he was schlocking a cotton sack of various and sundry highly flammable foam cubes dubbed as My Pillow. Before My Pillow took off, Lindell spent many years bouncing around different ventures before settling on cocaine and crack. Not surprisingly, after years spent sleeping on the street, he figured what the world needed was a good pillow. Unsurprisingly, his business had been plagued with accusations of false advertising, overstating the health benefits of his pillow, and general shoddy business practices. These shenanigans should have been enough to prevent such a tool from entering American politics, but this was, emphasis on was, after all, Donald Trump's America.
Yeah, I was going to say, those sound like qualifications for politics in America.
Yeah.
Up until very recently.
He's a self-made man. I think we
Sure.
have to give him that.
Sure, for now. His business success and extremely in-your-face Christianity garnered him a speaking slot at the 2019 Conservative Political Action Committee, basically a venue for young conservative white men to discover how many other people think Mein Kampf is underrated.
Right.
In the speech,
I think you got to hand it to Hitler.
gotta hand it to Hitler.
One thing that he did get right. ...
In this speech, Lindell made waves by proclaiming in his goofy voice that Trump was, quote, the greatest president in history and chosen by God. Guess who noticed that? Well, before we proceed, it was at this point that we talked about Lindell and rightly predicted that a Muppet this insane was going to find plenty of space to operate in a Trump administration. Little did we know how insane this was all going to get. Never one to let slavish sycophancy go unrewarded, Trump invited Lindell to speak on June 27th, 2020, at, of all places, a coronavirus press conference. At the time, there had only been about 126,000 deaths in the U.S. so far.
And simpler times.
Yeah, and the fact that 126,000 seems like a small number speaks to the moment we are still living through. And the fact that of all people on God's good earth, that Trump chose to speak on those deaths was Mike fucking Lindell speaks to how seriously he was taking this tragedy.
Yeah.
In that press conference, Lindell said the following, quote, God gave us the grace on November 8th, 2016 to change the course we were on. God had been taken out of our schools and lives. A nation had turned its back on God. I encourage you to use this time at home to get back to the Word, read our Bible, and spend time with our families. Thanks, Mike.
That's good information on the virus.
I
Thanks
think,
so much.
why waste time with having like a virologist talk when you can
Exactly.
get that kind of medical advice?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lindell was then...
From a guy who did all the crack before he found Jesus.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
He only found Jesus because he ran out of crack.
Yeah. Pulled himself up by the crack pipe.
It was then discovered that Lindell was one of the people who had paid for the legal defense of Kyle Rittenhouse, who shot peaceful protesters with an AR-15 in Kenosha, Wisconsin in August.
Oh, he did? He contributed to that?
He contributed to that.
I thought that was just that fuck Rick Schroeder.
No. Lindell made sure to throw some pillow money at the guy.
Beautiful.
As the coronavirus continued to ravage our country, those around Trump realized that there was $1 to be made, and of course, Lindell was right in there. Lindell began promoting a plant extract called oleandrin as a straight-up cure for COVID-19. I don't know if you guys remember this.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Saying,
It's poison.
It's poison, exactly. His quote was, "This thing works. It's the miracle of all time."
Oh, God.
Oleandrin, as Uncle Dan hinted to a second ago, by the way, is a toxic cardiac glycoside derived from the poisonous plant oleander. So, there's that. I guess the thinking is that if you are dead, you don't need to worry about the coronavirus. It will,
Which is true.
It has the added virtue of being true. It will surprise exactly no one that Lindell not only had financial stake in a company that produced oleandrin, but even sat on its board.
Ugh.
Lindell managed to get Housing and Urban Development Secretary and medical doctor Ben Carson to also hawk this quackery. God, I can't believe this era is over. It's unbelievable.
I still can't believe it's real. I can't
Oh
believe
my
it really
God.
happened.
So, yeah.
All right, and this brings us to the most recent, and please, Jesus, last chapter of this saga. After Trump's popular vote and Electoral College drubbing in November, Lindell took to Twitter and any microphone that would have him to call the election fraudulent, even going so far as to call for the arrest and imprisonment of voters in key battleground states. Voters. I know. Who had, by the way, already cast their votes, and the declaration of martial law. Lindell also railed against the Dominion voting systems machines with such alacrity that he finds himself almost certainly part of a wide-ranging defamation lawsuit by the company, and best of luck to them.
God, I hope they just fucking grind him.
Lindell even made an appearance at the White House on January 15th of this year.
Without a mask.
Without a mask, thank you. 9 days after the insurrection at the Capitol and 5 days before Biden's swearing in, carrying notes that were easily photographed by a journalist. Among the tidbits legible on the misspelled notes were the words, quote, martial law if necessary, impost martial law, and insurrection act now. As a hint to future revolutionaries, never underestimate the value of a manila folder.
Right? Just put it in your pocket, dummy.
For God's sakes. Lindell did in fact have a meeting with Trump that day, but the requested martial law was never ordered. So farewell, you washed up Ron Burgundy.
Do you remember too that Trump in one of the coronavirus meetings, he appointed him like a vice chair of the coronavirus task force.
Yeah.
And said his factory is going to make,
I was going to include that, but you're
X
right.
million
yes.
PPE, and then like 3 weeks later, they're like, "Yeah, we can't make anything."
They didn't make any.
Then not
we're
one.
pillows.
Yeah, they were going to. Well, there was obviously it was going to be a kickback to one of his,
Of course,
of cronies. But at the end of the day, at least there would have been fucking masks. But even that fell through. Yeah,
They're not even capable of that.
Yeah. So goodbye. May you, like your schlocky pillow, end up in the dumpster of history forever. So. This brings us to the last of the motley crew I want to talk about, but unfortunately, unlike the other dingbat we talked about today, this will certainly not be the last time we discuss this. Back in episode 102 and on several occasions since, and just most recently in Uncle Dan's segment, we have talked about QAnon. And in episode 138, we talked about Trumpism as a potential cult. Well, just over 2 weeks ago, the Venn diagram of QAnon and Trumpism formed a perfect circle as our national capital was stormed by an angry, violent mob. So just for a little background, for those of you who don't know anything about QAnon, please turn off the podcast now and continue in your obviously charmed life.
Yes. Walk into the mountains away from the city and never come back.
Just keep heading east.
Yeah.
Without going into too much detail, because as we'll talk about, this thing morphs and mutates on a near daily basis. But the gist of it is that there is a deep cover agent in the federal government named Q, who is working in conjunction with Trump and various other forces of righteousness to out and eventually destroy a massive, widespread conspiracy of child-eating pedophiles that have infiltrated every level of our culture, from government to pop culture, from academia to civil society. Trust me, the explanation I just gave makes it sound eminently more reasonable than it is.
Well, tell me when you get to the part that is unreasonable. That all sounded real good to me.
This conspiracy has grown to include the Kennedy assassinations. Yes, there were more than one of them, but only one was faked. The moon landing, flat Earth, hollow Earth, gray and green aliens, lizard people, etc. I'm not kidding.
No,
for
it's
real.
all in there.
Yeah, as we've called this many times on the show, it is the unified field theory of derp.
Yeah.
Well, their motto is "Where we go one, we go all," and I think that applies also to how many conspiracy theories they believe in.
That's right. Why not bring them all on? And like you said, Uncle Dan, that conspiracy theory, which they abbreviate to WWG1 WGA, was lifted directly from a 1996 movie called White Squall.
Which is like a movie where tons of young boys discovered they were very gay.
And very shirtless for most of the
Sure,
movie.
that's-
Yep.
Yeah.
The case.
Along with the ubiquitous letter Q and the number 17, Q is the 17th letter in the alphabet, you will see this motto everywhere on Q merch. Yes, there is Q merch.
Yeah.
Not sure how merchandising fits into a supposedly secret conspiracy, but there it is. And just to be clear, I am only scratching the surface of all this stuff, believe me.
Yeah.
One of the most widespread beliefs is that Donald Trump, will lead his followers with the help of JFK Jr., not kidding, in a violent coup that will expose and overthrow the pedivore conspiracy, and that will even lead to public
Did you make
executions.
that word up?
No, that's what they call these people, are pedivores.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
So this will lead to public executions. This literal storming of the Capitol and violent coup is referred to as the Storm.
Yeah.
This is lifted from a popular poem by an unknown author. It goes like this. Fate whispers to the warrior, you cannot withstand the storm. The warrior whispers back, I am the storm.
I am the storm.
You have to say a Batman voice. Or
I am the storm.
I think you can see where this is all heading. If you go back and watch the footage of the January attack on the Capitol, you will see Q paraphernalia everywhere, along with all kinds of other troubling iconography.
Yeah, the guy that chased the very heroic officer who led them away from the Senate, George, I'm spacing his last name right now.
Yep.
The guy that was attacking him most directly was wearing a big old Q shirt.
Big Q shirt.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And nearly every fringe militia and white supremacist group in America today has found shade under the Q umbrella. So you can see the logos for such groups as the Proud Boys, the Three Percenters, and the Oath Keepers, among many others, marching in lockstep with Q flags flying as they successfully stormed the capital of the United States of America. So, quite the low point in our history. How this could have been allowed to happen is going to be an ongoing question and subject of investigation for years to come. But why it happened is as clear as the glass dome over the flat Earth. For years, Donald Trump disparaged our institutions and led his followers to believe that only he could save the country, and any attack on him was an attack on them and therefore America. Fed a constant diet of lies and conspiracies, thousands of Trumpers/Q followers, now one and the same, descended on Washington, D.C. on January 6th, their marching orders already fully in hand. Trump would not take any chances, though, and on that morning he made sure his intentions and desires were clear to the heavily armed crowd. After 30 minutes or so of claiming the election was stolen from him, he said the following, quote, "Now it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. After this, we're going to walk down there, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. We're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength. You have to be strong. And finally, we're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're going to the Capitol. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness they need to take back our country." In layman's terms, that's what we call incitement.
Yeah.
Now, we all know what happened next, including the fact that Trump did not, in fact, march with them.
Right.
To all those that rushed the Capitol, this was the storm.
Yeah.
You can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. You can imagine in those heady moments when the Capitol security collapsed, the vote count was halted, and those people found themselves walking unfettered in both chambers of Congress, Sanctuary Hall, or Statuary Hall, and various legislators' offices, that it was really happening. The prophecy was coming true.
Yeah.
And this is where this becomes very relevant to our show. We've talked about so many cults that reach their zenith and reach their climax, often ending in suicide, often ending in violence. But here we are. The Q conspiracy theory had stormed the castle. The storm was here. But the storm began to blow out pretty much immediately. You could see it in the faces of the insurrectionists in real time, the dawning and troubling question of, now what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We caught the
It's
car.
amazing.
Now what
Yeah.
do we do?
The only guy who seemed to have an actual agenda was the ubiquitous QAnon shaman, Jake Angeli, or Jacob Chansley, and his entire plan seemed to consist of literally shouting at the full moon.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the only one who seemed to know what he was doing.
Yeah.
Trump was not.
He also burst into prayer at one point.
Indeed,
Yeah.
he did. That's right. Trump was not with them, and by the skin of our fucking teeth and through the bravery of a precious few, they did not get their hands on any legislators. Instead, they milled about, stole some property, defaced some statues, and then just kind of left.
And
Trump
pooed.
offered it.
They pooed in the corner.
Yeah, they took a shit here and there, pissed on
Yeah.
everything, and then just left.
Like you do.
Like you do. Trump offered a tepid call for peace, underscored with praise and love for all their heinous acts, but he gave no instructions on what to do next.
And reiterating the lie.
That he's right, the election was stolen, but he made no reference to Q, the storm, tribunals, or JFK Jr. The storm further deflated when only hours later, when Congress reconvened and finished the vote count, and then the very next day, Trump conceded Biden's victory, albeit never mentioning his name, and announced that he would leave the White House on January 20th to go play golf.
Yeah.
Right.
And sure,
A video which looks like he's got a gun to his head.
Totally.
Truly.
It was a proof of life video.
and sure enough, early on the morning of the 20th, only days ago, he boarded Marine One for one last time and flew the fuck away.
With pockets
Oh my
full of
God.
White House silverware, probably.
Everything he could get his hands on, absolutely.
It was one of the greatest moments of my life. If I had children, I don't think their birth would have topped this.
Right. Get the fuck out.
But you think about this from the perspective of his cult members. This is exactly what it would have been like if David Koresh had walked out of a burning Mount Vernon only to fly away and play golf.
Right.
Or if Jim Jones had passed out the poison Kool-Aid and then walked out of Jonestown to play golf. Or if Marshall Applewhite had passed out the poison applesauce and then walked out to go play golf.
Right.
Like, you just abandoned them.
Yeah.
You just went away. And then the arrests began. One after another from coast to coast, they began to hear knocks at their doors, only to be greeted by legal authorities of the deep state with flex cuffs and handfuls of federal charges. And as if to add insult to idiocy, their dear leader refused to pardon any of them on his way out the door.
Yep.
So already online, I don't know if you guys have seen this, countless Q adherents are realizing that it was all a lie.
Yeah, I've been watching.
have we
I've been
seen
observing
it?
it. Yeah.
Yep.
It was my life the day after the
Yeah.
inauguration. That was my everything, my
Thoroughly
world.
enjoying it. These people have lost jobs, fortunes, friends, all to follow Trump and Q, and the storm never materialized, and their dear leader, who disdains them most of all, has abandoned them. Yeah. So that
The truth is that a lot of it was genuinely sad. A lot of
Yeah,
it was, like,
very sad. I took
hard to watch, and I had a lot of sympathy and empathy for them because they were literally abandoned by. Well, I mean, they were believing in a person that they didn't know who the person was, with no assurances.
in spite
from,
of a lifetime of signaling.
of being exactly who he is.
Yeah.
right. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying they're believing Q, which
Oh, right.
they didn't have any idea who Q was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then, this Trump that was just a nonsense human. I don't know. But man, I saw some videos of did you guys see the video of the woman just
Crying. You're right.
despondent,
Yeah.
begging Trump to like make sense of the world for
Well,
her?
is that the one that flew to the Capitol on a private plane and is now begging for A, a pardon, and B, donations for her legal defense?
No, she's her own fun little ball of wax. But this is just a woman who clearly just, I don't even know that she was there for anything, but just weeping and begging
Hysterical. Like she.
President Trump, please come back. We need you. And just like, because the entire contention of the Q conspiracy was Trump has a plan,
Yep.
trust the plan, and there will be, and there, there's this whole, he's playing 3D chess, so don't worry about
Yep.
it. Everything looks like it's going the wrong way, but there's a plan. And if you just trust the plan, everything will be fine. And turns out there was no plan.
There was no plan.
And they imbued him not just with, managerial and political skills that he doesn't have. He had godlike status. He had a messiah. He had a messiah status.
Totally.
I mean, this is a Christian offshoot, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that this cult is obviously done. I think it's going to splinter into a million pieces, and I'll talk about a form it's already taken. But, this is the largest cult in American history and probably the best armed cult in world history. And we managed to get through, the storm with only 5 dead, which is terrible. But this could have been so much worse. This could have been.
I agree with that.
They built a gallows that looked to be functional. You know what I mean?
And
Like-
now we see, they intercepted messages where they were tracking the legislators, and they knew they were in the tunnel, and they were going to try to block it off.
yeah.
Yeah.
This could have, and if the National Guard had got there and it was a hostage situation with a dozen or so lawmakers, one can only, fucking shudder at what could have possibly happened.
Yeah.
But now, because what is derp may never die, some splinters of the Q conspiracy are already retooling, even going so far as to say that Joe Biden is in league with Trump, and the storm is still coming.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I saw somebody claiming that Biden was Q.
Oh my God! Well,
Oh, my God.
as evidence
so
of this,
insane.
they say that Trump's nickname for Biden, Sleepy Joe, they're interpreting that as a hidden message that Biden is actually a sleeper agent.
Oh, my God.
And
Stop with this.
The note that apparently Trump actually left for Biden turns out to be a set of instructions on the next step in the conspiracy. So
It's brilliant.
this isn't going away. We witnessed in real time, and all of us glued to our televisions, a cult reach its suicidal moment, and
Yeah.
and it happened. We saw it.
Yeah.
And
we were saying before we started recording, it is like unto the Great Disappointment, the Millerite.
Yeah,
moment
1844,
where
Great Disappointment.
where literally they had a date when there was a hard out on this thing,
Yeah.
and it didn't come to pass, and now they're all just sort of left to either triple down, double down, quadruple down, whatever it is on this thing, or wake up.
Yeah.
And I've seen a number of posts, from Parler or from whatever, where people were saying, "Holy shit, this wasn't true."
Yep.
Yeah.
Like the whole time, this wasn't true.
I think there will be
it's
millions of
amazing.
people that will go through that.
I think
Yeah.
I think there will be, a significant number that peel off and hopefully kind of live a saner, consume saner information and hopefully come back to something like a normal life.
Right.
But like, the Millerites that walked down off that hill in October of 1844, some left, but then out of that came two, I would say, terrible religious movements, which are, the Seventh-day Adventists and the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right.
Like it's plastic, right? Cult belief can be very plastic. And so
What's nice is that, like the Millerites, there another date has emerged when everything is going to
March
get right.
something, right?
And again, they'll have another moment when it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And they'll lose another significant number of their people.
Well, I never want us to be accused of being behind the times here. So this is a Heretics in the News subsection, because while we were talking,
Jesus God.
someone
what?
emailed me a article from the Houston Chronicle that the Texas GOP has adopted as their slogan, "We are the storm."
Oh my God.
That happened right fucking now. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, the future of certainly the conservative movement in this country is very fucking grim.
fuck
If
me.
they can't, and I don't know how they shake this off. There's no courage. There's no institutional courage to banish these people.
No.
And it looks like they might splinter.
Right.
At which point there will be, if they have a full schism, they're never going to win another election for 20 years.
Well, I mean, the scary thing is that in certain districts in the country that are so deep red, the fear, the only danger to those seats is constant primaries. So we may see some, and I don't think a majority, I think a very few, but we may see some Congress people in this country go even further down this rabbit hole because of those forces, that pressure.
Yeah, and I gotta just bring this up again, guys, that the person who was going to save the children of Earth from sexual enslavement and literally being on the menu from Jews and George Clooney or Tom Hanks and the Democrats or whomever is Donald
elites.
Trump, a man who has constantly talked about wanting to fuck his own daughter, who walked was prideful about walking into the Junior Miss America pageant dressing room where they were minors, right? These were not full-grown women. These were minors. And who even commented on his infant daughter's lack of breasts when Tiffany was born.
And
how
not for nothing,
disappointed he
is
was.
on video partying
With
Jeffrey Epstein. Partying
Right.
so hard that he looks to make Jeffrey Epstein somewhat uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Think about that.
He's the fuck. This is just the craziest thing. I can't believe this is real.
But he's
Don't
gone.
worry, he's going to jail. They'll all experience that. That'll be their next fun thing.
Well,
God,
let's
hope so.
Let's hopefully put these two stories to bed forever and move on.
Sweet, stupid Doug.
Oh,
All right.
it's a beautiful dream, Doug. Don't worry
Until
about
the next Q drop, let's move on.
it. Yep.